Night Nation, I'm Trylko from the Sons of UCF, joined by Eric Lopez of the Black and Gold Banneret. Welcome to Around the Kingdom. Elo, hello to you.
Hello, Trace. Coming up on the fastest UCF show around. Spring football practice starts next week. Trace is fired up. We're going to go over some of the key questions that you're learning in spring football, plus UCF basketball wrapping up the regular season, hosting number one. Houston, do they have a shot? We'll talk about that. Plus, baseball and softball start Big 12 play. Who has a better chance of having a successful Big 12 conference season? That's all coming up here on Around the Kingdom.
Well, before we get going with all of that, let us welcome in the third member of our team, Adam Eaton from the Sons of UCF. He watches the clock. He watches our facts. Adam, hello.
Happy March, gentlemen. I have a question for both of you off the top. I know silly games coming up soon. Are you pro or anti daylight savings time? Because that's coming up in a couple of days. Anti for Trace, Eric?
I don't like changing the clock. It should just be the same thing all year.
Well, I've learned after recently doing some West Coast softball games here from the East Coast that I think we all should just be on West Coast time.
Much better sports time. But I'll keep an eye on the clock for you gentlemen tonight as you get into another episode of Around the Kingdom.
All right. Talk to you soon, Adam. Elo, you mentioned it. Spring football begins next week for UCF. We will get 10, 15 minutes of availability once a week. Gus Malzahn won't really tell us a whole lot. I'm not sure what we'll learn, but for you, what's one of your biggest questions that we know we're really not going to get an answer to?
Well, I'm going to have an article about this. What questions do I have at spring football? One that I have is all these new faces they brought in via the transfer portal and even obviously from the recruiting class on the defensive side of the ball going to make a big impact, especially in the linebacker position, Trace. We've got all these new names. I think it's going to be a new starting lineup in the linebacking core. Have they upgraded in those positions? I'm curious to hear. I know you're going to say that Gus won't say much, but usually when you're around spring practice, people will talk a little bit and just you'll hear what certain people will say or not say about each individual, maybe gives you an idea. So I'm kind of curious to see the defensive side of the ball, the new faces, and if they've made the upgrades, especially the transfers in the linebacking position.
Well, yeah, right. Jason Johnson no longer with the team. Walter Yates III no longer with the team. I want to know who becomes the face of this defense? Who replaces Tremont Morris-Brash? What is the identity of this defense? It certainly didn't feel like it had much of an identity last season.
It doesn't. And remember, obviously, Ted Roof is on board, so you have him as the co-defensive coordinator. So I think that's – you say may not – I'm assuming we'll hear from Ted Roof during this spring maybe and kind of get an idea how they figure they're going to change defenses. The other big question, obviously, who takes the Javon Baker role? He's obviously going to be in the NFL. Kobe Hudson returns. You got Xavier Townsend. How does he look? But is there another receiver, Trace, that steps up and gets in that conversation? Is it somebody like a Trent Whittemore, or is it one of the new guys, or like a transfer like Lawrence, for example, coming over from FSU? I'm kind of curious how the wideouts look with KJ Jefferson.
I'm interested to see the impact of the early enrollees in the transfer portal class. Also, saying that word transfer portal, who might enter that portal later on, perhaps after spring. That'll be something interesting to watch. I think also the battle at QB2. Now, Gus has not officially said KJ Jefferson, the Arkansas transfer, is the starting quarterback. It'd be fun to ask him that during his first media availability. Is this locked up? Is there really an open battle? But you got to imagine there's a pretty fierce battle for QB2.
I'm going to go, who's the backup running back going to be to R.J. Harvey, right? You know what you got in R.J. Harvey? You've got Johnny Richardson back, but is he the number two back? He's more of a scat back. You've got a transfer from Cincinnati that came on board. Got a guy like DeMarcus Bowman who had an injured plagued season last year. How does the running back room look like, Trace, in the pecking order should something happen to R.J. Harvey? I think that's something to watch in the spring.
And let me wrap up with special teams. Colton Boomer was automatic until he wasn't. And then as we've talked about, the yips sort of set in. Does he settle down? And will we really learn a whole lot whether he has during spring? Will it take actual game action to find out whether he is back through the upright successfully? So those are some questions. What are yours? Let us know. Spring camp gets underway soon.
Spring camp does get underway soon, but it's never too early to talk about impact players at UCF. Trace, who are some players that you think will be make a big impact on UCF, not just this spring, but going into the season in year two of the Big 12?
Well, I think it's the battle there behind RJ Harvey that you mentioned. You mentioned some names, DeMarcus Bowman. I want to see what he does, and I think he can have an impact. Whether RJ Harvey, not an injury situation, but he can't, carry the ball on every carry. It's a battle for number two, and they have depth at this position. I want to see the impact of these transfers, these Cincinnati guys, in particular, the running back Miles Montgomery. So I think that's going to be interesting. I think those guys will both be impact players for the Knights, and it'll be interesting to see how they're utilized.
KJ Jefferson, obviously, this guy's an impact quarterback. I don't care what you say, Trace. He's the starting quarterback. You could try to make up some storyline, try to create some drama.
Need a quarterback controversy.
No, we know. We've had enough of those, all right? Maybe in fantasy warfare or whatever, in fantasy football. But who is KJ Jefferson's go-to guy going to be? Is it a Kobe Hudson coming back? Is it Townsend? Is it somebody else that'll make that impact with him? Because I think with Jefferson, you might have some extra options there on the offensive side of the ball. And curious to see how Jefferson throws the football. How often do they continue to go vertically? Kind of like we saw with Plumlee do last year. But I think Jefferson, he's the key to this team. To me, he is the best quarterback they've had on this roster. I would go back to since Mackenzie Milton 2018. I know people will bring up Dillon Gabriel, but I actually think Jefferson for this particular system is a way better fit than Dillon Gabriel. And this guy's actually won big games on the road, unlike the other guy. So I'm looking at Jefferson.
As he goes, the season goes. I mean, you're a guy that likes 9 wins, 10 wins. You think that rests on his shoulders?
I do, because if something happens to him, Trace, you brought it up earlier. Who's the backup quarterback? Timmy McClain? Ooh, kind of hit and miss last year a little bit. And then you got a lot of youth behind that. So, I mean, I think this is a big key. I think he is a guy that can make a difference. This is a guy that's gotten Arkansas to bowl games, competed in the SEC, has played in the biggest environments. For them to compete in this Big 12, which, by the way, includes Utah and Arizona and Colorado and Arizona State this year, they need a healthy Jefferson to be big-time Jefferson for them to be in the top half of this league.
Before we run out of time in this segment, the defensive side of the ball, let me give you 2 names that I'm looking forward to: the growth of John Walker and the further emergence of Lee Hunter. I think those 2 could be very big players for the Knights defense in 24.
Stole my guy, John Walker. Front. Got to be physical up front. Another year older. I don't think they shouldn't get as pushed around as much as they did last year in the league, in the Big 12 games.
Well, all this talk of UCF with 9, 10 wins, possibly in a conference championship game, 24/7 says, wait a second. Knights at 7-5, they are predicting, talking about how they were in so many 50-50 games last year. Remember, last year at this time, Gus Malzahn said there was an emphasis on late game situations. He knew that a lot of games would come down to the wire. Knights didn't always fare well in those games that came down to the wire, predicting 7-5 for the Knights. And I'm not sure that would satisfy Knight Nation.
Not sure that would satisfy Gus Malzahn. You saw what happened. 6-7. He kind of blew up his staff a little bit. That seems to be like the low bar. I think this year the schedule's more favorable, less travel. I've gone on record right now. My way too early because nothing says win-loss like March. Obviously, subject to change. 9-3. I think 9-3 is doable. 9-10 wins, be in the top half of the league, compete with Utah, Arizona, and Oklahoma State right there in that top half of the Big 12. I think with a healthy Jefferson, you hope an improved defense. You got a lot of pieces back on the offensive side of the ball. Why can't we win 9-10 games, Trace? Come on.
Because Gus Malzahn averages 4 losses a season, because the Knights have not played particularly well on the road under Gus Malzahn. When you have them at 9-3, we'll just say 9-3. How many games do you have them losing on the road? 5 road games. What do you got them losing?
Well, I got them winning. I think probably maybe a West Virginia. I think they win at TCU. I would have them winning TCU and Iowa State. Maybe Iowa State, West Virginia could, if you just for fun, split those games. Win at Florida. No doubts of winning in Gainesville. To me, TCU and at Florida early in the year will set the tone for how the season goes.
What do you think, though, that it speaks that the national publications still not showing a lot of respect to UCF as it enters year 2 in the Big 12? You know, you so often have talked about brand. It certainly feels in this composition of the Big 12 that the UCF brand is still not respected to be a dominant player.
Well, in fairness, I think the majority would agree with your assessment. And really, it's not even, I actually don't think you're saying that Gus is good for 4 losses. You can make the case UCF has been good with 4 losses even prior to Gus. If you look at the last 2 years, with Josh Heupel in 2020 at the bottom, they've had a ton of losses since 2018. They're a program that's 4 losses or more. It seems like I think 19, maybe they had 3 losses. But the point is, they have not been that 17, 18 team. So you have the mathematical edge in that the odds would tell you 4 losses is the more likely number, 8-4. So I think everybody else kind of agrees. They're kind of wait and see approach. Plus, a lot of the media loves Utah. Look at Utah. They've been winning the Pac-12 conference title. So they should get the respect that Utah is getting right now.
No matter what, spring practice gets underway soon, and we will have all of March into April to chew on every 10-second clip and nugget of information we get out of spring camp, Elo.
We look forward to those footages you will provide for us, Trace. You better be on top of your game, my friend. Speaking, another team that needs to be on top of their game is UCF men's basketball. Final week of the regular. It is March, folks. We are still basketball season. Knight's coming off a tough 60-52 loss to number 8 Iowa State, led by one late, but Iowa State made a late run. They'll now host number 1 Houston at home, senior night, then finish off at TCU. Let's first start. Look, a split last week, win at Oklahoma State. Lose to Iowa State. You were there, Trace, for Iowa State. What stands out to you?
Knights went cold at the end. How about 1 of 19 from 3? You guys know the statistics. You watched the game or you were there. If they make just a couple of threes, Elo, if they do a little bit better from the free throw line, 22 turnovers. You can't beat a top 10 team playing like that. The margins are too tight in this league. We see it game in and game out. And now number 1 Houston. Now Houston escapes in their most recent game against Oklahoma, but they're still vying for a conference championship. Houston making a tremendous transition from the American into the Big 12, seamless for their part. It's going to take the Knights' best game of the season. And you remember what happened when they went to Houston, a dismal shooting performance. And you know all the same recipe here, Elo. They got to start out stronger than they do in a lot of these games. And it doesn't get easier again on the road at TCU. But they did steal the win at Oklahoma, so it does show you they can win a game on the road. Yeah, I'm sorry, Oklahoma State.
Still, hey, those people in Oklahoma take that very seriously, Trace. Be careful which way to get that right. They turned the ball over 20 times against Iowa State. Give credit to you on Suns UCF Live. Your Iowa State guest, who's a bit of a potty mouth, was correct about Iowa State turning the ball over, forcing turnovers, and that also hurt UCF as far as the shooting. I'm going to give you some optimism for Houston. Houston's shorthanded here a little bit here. They got some injuries they're dealing with internally. They can clinch a share of the Big 12 title game. They host Kansas in a sellout game at Fertitta Saturday. Monster game there. Maybe they overlook UCF a little bit. UCF sneaks up on them, gets an upset. I'm just saying. And then, TCU, same thing. Maybe they're overlooking to the Big 12. We'll see.
If they upset Houston, is it back to storming the court? Has that become the
There's
thing
some
again?
storm chasers they're going to be in the building apparently. So yeah, maybe.
All right, let us welcome back in Adam. Time for some silliness.
All right, gentlemen, here we go. First question for you. I'll start with you, Eric. On Twitter this weekend, our friend Kobe Hudson started a little bit of controversy when he declared Javon Baker to be the best wide receiver in UCF history. Obviously, a little recency bias. Javon in the NFL Combine. Obviously, Kobe and Javon play together. So, Elo, A, is Javon the best receiver in UCF history? If not, then who takes that mantle in your opinion?
No, he's not. But he's looking out for his teammate there. I don't expect Kobe Hudson to know the history of UCF football receivers and breaking them down. But you should check out my ranking when I do these on blackeaglebannerate.com and can learn a little bit. Brandon, if you're including professional football, Brandon Marshall is the best wide receiver that's come out of UCF with a great college career and an NFL career that's borderline Hall of Fame material. I think Brandon Marshall. If you take away the pro side of things, I would say Traquan Smith is the best receiver I've seen collegiately, and Mike Sims Walker was pretty good himself at UCF.
Yeah, I would just say this, Elo, and those names are the right names, but I don't think you can include the professional career. It's what they did while they were at UCF. So, that's the difference there, and that's why Brandon Marshall cannot be considered the best wide receiver in UCF history.
He's in the Hall of Fame, UCF, like it or not.
That's fine. I'm fine with that.
Who's your best guy? Who's your best guy? Who's your? Give me
I'm fine. I'm fine with Traquan Smith. The names you mentioned, those are your Mount
Dave
Rushmore
Davis
wide
was
receivers.
very good. Rashad Perriman, UCF. Yeah.
David Rhodes may like a word, gentlemen. All right, let's start with the spring game. We talked about this earlier. In the spirit of silly game, last year UCF got a little silly. I think there was a citronaut race at some point. Big men caught punts. A lot of interesting contests. So Trace, I'll start with you. If you could put one silly game into this year's UCF football spring game, what would you want? What silly game would you want inside the spring game?
I'm for any position player, not a kicker, attempting a field goal or an extra point.
Ooh, I like that. Who's your money on? Who's the betting favorite?
I don't know. I'd have to think on that. I don't know. I don't know who I like in that.
Paul Rubel, he's from Germany. I don't know.
Imagine that guy running up to the ball.
Elo, pick a silly spring game for UCF football.
Oh, I got it. I want it kind of like some these other schools have done it. Make a media person be the coach for a quarter. Have Trace coach one side, UCF Mike the other. See who's the better brains in the football mind there, huh?
Wow. What's in the water bottles? What's in the water? What's in the water bottles? Because that could dictate the beverage of choice. Could dictate who I pick in that win. I'm gonna go UCF Mike. I think he's gonna take it more seriously than Trace is. I think Trace is gonna want to have some fun. Rubel will be kicking. I think Mike's gonna be out to win.
Yeah, I'm gonna have offensive linemen kicking football, so I got no chance of winning that game.
All right, I hate to go negative town, gentlemen. We haven't talked a ton about this team, but it's certainly been a bit of a challenge. So, Eric, I'll start with you. Women's basketball has struggled this year. Satia Messer, hot seat. Yes or no?
What are you, JP Gilbert here?
Might be.
Women's basketball. Wow, we haven't talked that. That's a first on this show. No, I don't think she's in the hot seat, but I think next year is pretty important, right? To make some progress. Obviously, they finished last in the regular season. They're going to play in the conference tournament. I think next season is a pretty important year to make some progress.
No hot seat, not even warm, but they can't go 3-15 again next season. They have to show progress. They have to bring in the recruits. They have to score some players in the transfer portal. They can't keep being 3-15. So no hot seat.
Okay. All right. And in honor of UCF playing the Houston Cougars this week. All right, gentlemen, in real life, which of the mascots of teams UCF has played in basketball this year scare you more? Here are your options: the Maine Black Bears, the Houston Cougars, the FAMU Rattlers, the Lipscomb Bisons, or the FIU Panthers. In real life, Trace, which of these animals scare you more? Black Bear, Cougar, Rattler, Bison, or Panther?
That is easy. Snakes, any kind of snakes. I don't care. I don't ever want to hear he's more afraid of you than you are. No, Rattlers. Terrible. Scared already.
Okay.
Black Bears. You know how big those bears are, man? They can go on top of you, man. Eat you up, man. No way. Get away.
I gotta go with Elo here. I think the black bear is the answer, although I'm anti-snake as well. I feel like the black bear, they have speed, they have power. A bison's a large thing. I feel like it's dumb though, so I feel like I could outsmart it. The black bear, smart, fast, agile, quick. It's got a lot of problems.
All right, check back with you in a few, Adam. Elo, what comes first, the article or the topic on Around the Kingdom? You with the article at the Black and Gold Banner. Kirk Spearaw, former UCF men's basketball head coach, longtime coach. Should he be in the UCF Athletics Hall of Fame? Seems a no-brainer, Elo. Welcome back, Kirk.
Yeah, for those that don't know, obviously he was there in attendance. They honored the 94 UCF basketball team. They had, I believe, halftime of the Iowa State game. Great to see him. Obviously, he's retired now. Michael Donald mentioned on social media afterward, why is Kirk not in the Hall of Fame? Part of he's been assisted at Iowa, but it's a no-brainer. I wrote about this on blackandgoldbanner.com. He took over this UCF basketball program when it was literally arguably the worst college basketball program in Division I. when he took over. I think the most wins they'd had in Division I season was 10. And he got them to some credibility, winning 4 conference championships of the ASUN and into the NCAA tournament with not many resources to have or a budget, too much of a budget. In fact, if you watch the Sons of, I encourage everybody, tune into Mike and Adam's interview with Kirk Sparrow from a recent episode. Over an hour, really in depth. I think it's the UCF interview of the year. I don't think we'll have a better UCF interview from any platform than that one that Adam and Mike did. And Kirk was very honest about all the struggles he had to do. He was very nice about it, but Kirk Sparrow should be in the Hall of Fame, and I think he will be soon.
You remember when they made that transition from the Atlantic Sun into Conference USA? What a leap that was for the UCF program. And they did pretty well during that transition. Now, it may not be as big a transition as what it has been like for this year's team in the Big 12, but that was huge back in the day, and the Knights fared pretty well.
No doubt. And listen, there's a lot of similarities I mentioned with Kirk and Johnny Dawkins in that both basketball, the resources, it's been well documented, has not where it's up to par to some of the top programs, especially in the Big 12. Kirk had to deal with a lot of that back then. His situation was worse because he had to deal with Keith Tribble as an AD, who was a clown, an absolute clown. And that was a debacle, and we all saw what happened after that. So, it's been tough. And Johnny, obviously, they're trying to move it up now as they transition to the Big 12. So we'll see. But I was great to see Kirk, wasn't it? You were in the building. I had to broadcast softball. I couldn't be there. You happened to be there and got to see that.
It was great to see the entire team back, too, all those players enjoying the moment with Kirk Sparrow. You watch the Hall of Fame every year closely. Yeah. Do they bring him in this next class?
I think they could. I think I would put him in. I think he could be one of the front runners for this upcoming class. You want to know what I would do? And again, I have no idea if this will ever happen or not. They've been holding the Hall of Fame in a hotel. I wonder if they ever do move it to like Addition Financial Arena. Wouldn't that be something if you put in like Kirk Sparrow in the first year down the road here in the basketball arena that was built when he was the head coach here and opened in November of 2007. That's just my booking. I don't know any of that. They might just, I think they're going to still do it in the hotels. But yeah, I think he'll get in. I could see him getting in this fall or next fall. The next year. I would be stunned if he wasn't, quite honestly, because I know
a lot of welcome back, Kirk Sparrow.
Kirk, good coach back in his day. A lot of good coaches and that deal from that standpoint. All right, Trace, we got prop bets, folks. Everybody's favorite segment on the show.
You're trailing, though. You're trailing. By the way, is my math wrong? How do we have 17 of these? Did we just do one week? Or
I messed up the count? Game. Yeah, because Kansas State, we just had one game. I don't think we thought about this as depth as we should have. I don't know. Okay. Or maybe we kicked out. You won because Jada Cody got 2 hits on Saturday, which I was happy about. You.
How about that softball delivered for me?
I know. That was very bizarre for me. I was happy you got that. I was hoping maybe UCF would actually. UCF had no blocks in the game against Iowa State. I couldn't believe that. But at least Darius got, didn't have his sports deals.
All right, what's this week's?
All right, so this week, folks, we're going big. Senior night, Wednesday night, Trace. Over, under 30.5 points for all the UCF basketball seniors that'll play against Houston, Trace.
You have first pick.
I do get first pick. I will go over.
All right, well, to be different, I will take the under. I have the first pick on this next one. Free throws made at TCU versus UCF baseball hits combined on Saturday. Give me baseball, softball. I'm going to beat you again with softball.
What you doing, man? Fine. There you go.
All right. Something else we've been tracking. Hey, congratulations to Adam. He waited until the very end, his selections in the scheduled draft. He has won with Texas Tech, Oklahoma State. He's got TCU on Saturday. I've got the lone win over West Virginia. You had UCF beating Iowa State. You're 0 for 3 in this, Elo. 0 for 3.
I'm not as smart as Adam, who decided to wait till the end. He was trying to act like, oh, I don't know how this works. I don't understand this, and then he's gonna end up winning this.
Congratulations to Adam for that. All right, we switch now to round ball, baseball, softball.
That's correct. We got baseball and softball, ladies and gentlemen. Baseball off to an 8-1 start. Won 2 out of 3 against the Cows. What went right, Trace? You were there. What went wrong? They got top 5 Florida on a midweek this week before going to Big 12 play at Oklahoma.
You know what? Can I just say this on the what went right, what went wrong? I mean, they beat South Florida 2 out of 3. They could not go undefeated and over a long baseball season. But it feels anticlimactic to me. I'm waiting for conference play to begin, and that tells you the heightened expectations with this move to the Big 12. I'm just not as interested in a weekend series with South Florida, looking at the calendar, looking ahead and seeing they're at Oklahoma this weekend. Now there's some juice in that Gator midweek game, but bring on conference play. I still don't know what we have in this team, though.
How about the fact, though, UCF won a 1-0 baseball game on Sunday? When's the last time we said that, Trace? A 1-0 baseball game on a Sunday afternoon. That is a while. That is encouraging, I would say, with the pitching. I mean, because it didn't matter who they were facing in the last few years. They would struggle pitching. So that might be a little – I'm going to give you a little optimism. Plus, they're not depending on the home run to get some runs. And maybe the 1-0. I know some people are saying the wind was blowing in, so that might have played a factor in the 1-0. But you're right. Look, we will not learn about this baseball team until Big 12 play starts, and that's going to start in Norman next weekend against the Sooners and go from there.
All right, seems like a broken record. We've said this before about softball. Goes 3-1 at the Knights Classic, 1-game dash because of weather. You were out there all weekend. I go back to this, though. They lost that game to South Carolina, and they are not winning those high-profile games. And I think they're getting ready to start Big 12 play. Every weekend series is going to be a high-profile game. I feel that they haven't started off as strong as with this senior-laden team as most fans were expecting.
Well, you're right. I mean, you mentioned the South Carolina. It was a great pitcher's duel. Sarah Willis for the Knights, and South Carolina had Elena Vaughter as an All-American. It was a 1-0 game going to the 7th. A couple miscues defensively for the Knights. They come back, scored 2 runs, but fall short. You're right. They haven't had that clutch over the win. And I tell you, I think this weekend in a lot of ways shows they haven't been able to get on a roll. They lose to South Carolina, come back, run rule Princeton, beat Kennesaw State. Then they're supposed to play Bethune, but Mother Nature interrupts with 2 lightning delays. The game gets halted for a future date. So as a result, Trace, they haven't been able to get that 5, 6, 7 game winning streak where you're just rolling yet. Will they get that? I don't know. The good news is you're in a Big 12 conference that's got 4 teams in the top 25, so you could still make a lot of ground up with your resume that you would not have been able to in the American. But you're right. Offensively, they're still leaving runners on base. There's still questions. You're absolutely right.
So who's better? Who's going to have the better season?
I actually think Big 12 baseball might have a better shot in the Big 12 because softball has not one, but 2 of the number 1 ranked teams in the country. I kid you not. There's 4 softball.
But Oklahoma has been beaten, Elo. The streak is snapped. There's hope for everybody else in the Big 12 now.
They've lost 1 of the last 72. But Texas is the number 1 ranked team in the other polls. They've split the polls. Oak State's in the top 10. Baylor's top 15. Baseball only has 1 team in the top 10. That's TCU, and 3 in the top 25. Baseball more random, not as dominant of a teams at the top like in softball. I actually think baseball can make surprise people and maybe have a better Big 12 season. We'll see.
Baseball picked 10th, right, in the Big 12. I'm still going to go with softball. I think they start on a roll. They get on a roll this weekend in their first Big 12 series. Let's bring back in Adam. Give us a little knowledge. We get anything wrong, Adam?
Yeah, nothing wrong here. You talked about names to watch for football, gentlemen. I'm going to posit for you Dalen Dotson, a newcomer from University of Tennessee Martin, could fill that gap on the defensive line. You talked about Miles Montgomery. I know he could be cute, running back too, rather. Last year, only 428 yards rushing, 3 touchdowns. So I don't know, maybe temper expectations. Impact players, you left out a name I think is really important. Malachi Lawrence, I think, could be an impact player on defense for UCF. You were talking about coaches. Bruce Feldman from The Athletic had a breakdown of the top coaches. Gus Malzahn, not featured in the top 25. However, Josh Heupel did check in at number 17. And you mentioned Kirk Spira, 247 and 233 in his UCF career. That's a 51% winning percentage. That transition from ASUN to Conference USA, 24-9 the last year in ASUN, went 14-15 in year 1 in Conference USA, and then 22-9. So certainly got UCF competitive in a hurry in Conference USA.
That is right. A future Hall of Famer. Thank you, Adam. One more thing before we go. Hey, Elo, the Big 12 Eats menu is back for next week's men's and women's basketball tournaments in Kansas City. The featured UCF item is not food, it's the Citronaut float, orange soda, and vanilla ice cream. Have you had one of those at the stadium?
I can't say I have.
You don't seem enthusiastic about it.
A little underwhelming, my friend.
A lot of the other Big 12 schools with actual food items. We got no foodie scene at any of the UCF venues. The Citronaut float. Look for new episodes midweek every week on the Sons of UCF YouTube channel. We also drop it in the audio feed wherever you get your downloadable content. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Eric Lopez. I'm Trylko. Thanks, everyone, for watching this week's Around the Kingdom.